Hi everybody, this is Zeri, Persian pen name on AO3. I'm on week 33 of my transition. I'll be taking my shot later on today. Um, I am more than a little frustrated right now. This is take 6 of this video. Uh, I just keep getting interrupted. Um, yeah, just home stuff. Primarily my mother-in-law. But such is life. So, what have I been doing this week? Whole lot of nothing, a lot of spinning, a lot of working. I I'm trying this week to purposefully work on masculinizing my voice. I've done some exercises, I've done some reading and some watching of videos. Uh, I am trying to increase the closed quotient, which is what gives me this buzzy tone in my voice, and that one is easier to keep up than increasing my embouchure, which I just realized I haven't been doing for this entire video, so now we're trying that. I am not good at lowering my larynx, so I will work on that later. But this is a higher closed quotient. This is hopefully increased embouchure as I remember it. It takes more concentration to keep that going. Closed quotient is where your vocal cords want to stay together uh, before the... It's just a little bit more... When you're speaking, your vocal cords are together, and the more of them that press, the longer it takes for air to go between them. And so it does take a little bit more force to send them through, and that gives the buzzy tone that you can hear. Um, they're just spending more time in a closed position. Uh, Embouchure is where basically your... Here we go. Yeah, I'll just do it like that. If this is the top of your mouth and this is where your... This is the top, the roof of your mouth. Yeah. And here's your lips. I guess this would be your soft palate. Embouchure is going from here to here and just letting there be more space for your voice to roll around in, just to give some more resonance. So I'm trying to keep all of that going and seeing how that does. So yeah, that's something I've been working on. I'm not changing the pitch of my voice at all. I'm not... Like I said, I'm really not good at the larynx stuff yet. If I managed it, it would be much lower. It would... Let's see. Yeah. This is what it would sound like if I was able... No, I can't do it. My larynx just keeps popping right back up every time I start speaking. But anyway, I'm trying to do that and get that into being more muscle memory for me so that I can... Just so I can work with how my vocal cords are physically changing and get something that sounds in a way that I like. So that's what I'm doing for this video. I keep getting interrupted, as I've said. My mother-in-law, when she took that fall, her arm and wrist were injured. For a little bit they thought there was a fracture, but there's not a fracture. They did multiple x-rays and it's doing fine, but it still hurts. And so she wanted to make another doctor's appointment. And so she's come in here several times so far to say, hey, I'm going to make a doctor's appointment. And I would say, okay. And she would go and make the appointment. And then she'd come back later saying, no, I canceled the appointment because I don't want to get up that early. And so I said, okay. And then she'd come back and just, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. So I try to keep the door to the library here closed when I'm recording, just as a way of, hey, now is the time to please not bother me. I'm doing a thing that requires sound. And that doesn't get respected. Well, spouse respects it. My mother-in-law not so much, but she doesn't really respect anybody's boundaries except for her own. So that's a thing. Like, that's just, you know, what we're dealing with up here. So, yeah, fun. But anyway. But yeah, so I did a bunch of spinning. God, I don't even remember what I've said on this video anymore. I'm sure that I must have mentioned 760 yards, heavy lace weight. 4 of them will be enough for a daisies shawl, which is the 6-foot square shawl that I showed in an earlier video. I'm just really not feeling good today. I'm not feeling it. I had been going to read a fairly longish story, 4,500 words. I think now I'm going to switch to a shorter one, and normally when I do the shorter ones, I just do multiple of them, but I'm not feeling it today. So today we're going to have one shorter story that I am just randomly switching over to. So I haven't read this one yet. So I'll be reading this one blind. This is this is another original work. The relationship is sorcerer/sentient book of spells. Alright, alright. It's rated teen and up. It was for Chocolate Box Round 3. The title is An Inheritance Like an Arranged Marriage by Tuesday. This looks pretty cute. So thank you, people who write fics, for putting stuff up here to bring us joy and raise our spirits. And, you know, honestly, like, just reading the tags on this, inappropriate humor, gallows humor, magic, horror elements, minor character death, yeah, that sounds fun. This is gonna be a crazy-ass story, and it's nice to have a connection with other fandom people and fic people who do this kind of things for each other. I'm not good at exchanges, but I've done a few, and it's very human, and I like it. So I'm feeling a little better. I'm gonna keep reading this one. Let's get going. So this is An Inheritance Like an Arranged Marriage by Tuesday. It was for Rosencrantz. Fantastic name there. It was an old tome. The leather was dusty, even under the protective glass of the display case, the leaves uneven and faded. They said that the last person to touch it started bleeding from the ears and put their own eyes out. At least, that was what Castle claimed when they were all drunk apprentices telling horror stories. Vera had mumbled something about bookish perverts before passing out, though that could have been entirely unrelated. It was amazing the things Riss remembered from his days of learning, when he couldn't recall a single one of the dozens of incantations Master Roderick had once set him to memorize. Riss was a terrible wizard. He wasn't sure why he'd been invited to this gathering at all. Castle, taller, broader, and just as stubborn as in his apprentice days, had appeared on Riss's doorstep and dragged him, which was the only reason he was actually here. Vera, short as ever, but somehow even more terrifying every single day, had met them at the entrance to Master Roderick's tower and told Riss he wasn't getting out of this. "I don't care if you died. I'd resurrect your corpse, bind your spirit, and you'd still be stuck as my meat shield. I am not facing that twisted old bastard alone." She wouldn't have anyway. A whole passel of Master Roderick's current and former apprentices, as well as a small smattering of others from the magical community, were crowded into Master Roderick's largest workshop. What passed for corners in the circular room were hotly contested. Vera, Castle, and Riss settled for hiding in the center of the crowd. Trusting the walls to protect you was an apprentice mistake. Better to have a body or five on hand to throw in the way. Master Roderick stood at the front of the room, where he'd set up a small podium like a stage. Mage lights circled his shoulders. One sat like a halo on his head. He preened at the panic and discomfort his presence brought them all. "I am sure you're wondering why I have called you all here today." There was a long, dramatic pause. A young man in front of Riss was hyperventilating and muttering over and over again, But I graduated. Castle took pity and cast a minor silencing hex. That, or he didn't want Master Roderick's attention drawn their way. "I have an announcement," Master Roderick said. "No more spider experiments," a young woman to Riss's left prayed. Master Roderick lifted his chin. "I'm dying." A small cheer went up. It was quickly silenced. Those foolish enough to let their elation get the better of them were frozen in place. It could be by their own fear. More likely, Master Roderick had petrified them all. Someone braver than Riss would have to check the statue garden later to see if there were any new additions. As if there had been no interruption, Master Roderick continued. "And I have brought you all here to determine my heirs." There was an absolute quiet of several dozen people thinking at once, "Not me, not me, not me." Master Roderick pulled out a number of objects, including the infamous tome. A fiery spider the size of an eagle, complete with wings, crawled onto the podium. Other, more horrifying creatures followed it. "Specifically, to let those in my possession that can choose for themselves choose now, while I can still cull any unworthy of my inheritance." Master Roderick smiled cheerfully. "Who wants to go first?" One enterprising young wizard threw himself out of a window. Master Roderick sighed and shook his head. A moment later, the wizard came scrambling back in. Snapping winds of teeth followed, but were stymied at the sill. He squeaked, "Forgot about the air moat." "How about you, Fluffy?" Master Roderick gave the flaming spider an encouraging pat. It gave a terrifying squeak. "Good choice. She always liked you." Master Roderick's smile was quite the thing to behold as the spider launched itself into the air and landed in the hair of the no longer praying woman to Riss's left. She screamed. This at least explained the fire ward she had been maintaining since she stepped foot into the tower. The spider let out a softer squee and caressed her face with wispy flames of its front legs. Your turn, Puddles. The oozing dark material that the less alert had thought to be Master Roderick's shadow reared up and swallowed whole one of the wizards standing at the front. Master Roderick laughed. No, a new friend, not food. Puddles spat out half of the wizard. With one long tendril, it hesitantly patted what was left of the wizard's face. "Oh, a good first attempt," Master Roderick praised Puddles. "Kill me," the maimed wizard said. "Don't be so dramatic. You'll be fine." Master Roderick gave an airy wave that healed the bare minimum of the damage. "Suck it up. You survived worse than this to graduate." Another wizard coughed. Riss thought he recognized her as one of the research assistants. That's one of the current apprentices. "Well, he'll need to toughen up if he ever wants to face the real world. Now, who's next?" The proceeding continued in this vein. The large crowd was whittled down as people were either chosen and allowed to leave, or chosen but subsequently rejected by Master Roderick. Puddles eventually spat out his new wizard's other half, and the unfortunate apprentice was attempting to piece himself back together. Vera had been chosen by an undead phoenix, but was electing to stay a little longer as moral support. "You just don't want to face what's likely to be a creature rampage outside alone." Vera sniffed. "Now that I have old Beaky, I'll never be alone again," she smiled. "But you're right. I do still need meat shields." "Finally," Master Roderick announced, "the grimoire. A picky thing. I've been trying to get rid of it for ages." To the tome, he said, "Oh, do be quiet. You don't like me any more than I like you. Maybe if you'd been a little less enthusiastic to leave, that last apprentice wouldn't have had a brain aneurysm and you'd already be free." "You," he said, gestured impatiently at Vera, "give it a try." He gestured at Vera, but suddenly Riss was in front of her, and Master Roderick was staring at Riss expectantly. Behind him, Riss heard Vera chirp, "Meat shield!" Riss gave in to the inevitable and made his way up to the front. Feeling rather silly, but also like he'd really rather continue breathing, Riss gave a short bow to the book and introduced himself. "I'm Riss. I'm a terrible wizard, though I did survive to graduate. A pleasure to meet you." Master Roderick's eyes narrowed. Riss. He snapped his fingers. "You're the spark who failed at book learning. All the learning, really. I didn't expect you to graduate at all. This is perfect. You shouldn't be able to do much damage." He picked up the tome and slapped it into Riss's chest. Riss automatically caught it before it could fall. This was a mistake. Riss could feel something catch and hook. Like even this accidental acceptance counted enough to mark his soul. Master Roderick gave another airy gesture, and the mage lights all went out. "Right, we're done here. Get out." The apprentices and assistants went scurrying. The bodies were swept against the walls. A helpful gale pressed Riss and his fellows out, back to the entrance and outside. Riss blinked in the sudden bright light of a summer afternoon. Half of the statue garden was knocked over. The yard and the path to the road were torn up and in pieces. A leg was sticking out of one of the mounds of overturned dirt. The trees and fields across the way were on fire. A jubilant "scream" echoed in the distance. "That went well," Vera said cheerfully. She hooked her arms in Riss's and Castle's. "Let's get blackout drunk." "I want to forget everything that just happened," Castle agrees. As ever, they dragged Riss along in their wake. The next morning, Riss was only able to remember bits and pieces of the night previous. A fragment of Castle shoving another mug into his hands. Flashes of old Beaky determinedly grooming bits of Vera's hair and his own smoky feathers. A slip-slide blur of stumbling home. Hands like old leather petting his cheeks, and a voice like a whisper of dry pages crooning, "You'll do, yes, you'll do." He was dressed in the rumpled clothes of the day before, but at least he'd gotten his boots off. The sheets were tangled around his legs and feet. In his arms, curled warm and close like a pleased and sleepy cat, was the grimoire. Hesitantly, he patted the cover. It was surprisingly soft and smooth. It gave a rumble like a purr. Riss wasn't bleeding from the ears. "You know I'm not much of a traditional wizard, right? Sorcery doesn't actually involve blah 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 blah. Sorcery doesn't exactly involve much in the way of books and memorization." Somehow, Riss got the impression the book didn't care. Epilogue. Riss brought the grimoire with him to the funeral. The desire to verify for oneself that Master Roderick was really truly dead was not limited to the living and the human. "And we're sure that's his real body?" came a hushed whisper behind him. Vera sniffed into her handkerchief, old Beaky attached to her shoulder. Riss was pretty sure she'd convinced it to dig its claws in to help with tear production. Riss and Castle had to settle for looking solemn, if not bereft. They, at least, were all in agreement that one could never be too careful. "Are we sure he only had the one?" someone else asked darkly. The coffin was lowered into the dirt. Riss had to wonder who thought it was a good idea to go with anything but cremation, with the ashes scattered into running water on several different continents. The grimoire was practically vibrating in his arms, which was disconcerting in the current context. "Are you blushing?" Vera hissed. Though she kept her handkerchief so close to her face, it was impossible to tell her lips were moving. "Why are you blushing?" "You really don't want to know," Castle murmured. Riss surreptitiously elbowed him. It wasn't Riss's fault Castle never really learned to knock. Before it could dissolve into a scuffle, someone called for silence, and a priest said a few words. Mostly good riddance, but there was a minor exorcism in there too. Without further ceremony, he dumped a shovelful of dirt into the hole. More formally, he said, "And now we lay this spirit to rest." A minor cheer went up. Those with more sense flinched automatically. Nothing happened. Even the cannier and more wary among them began to relax. And that was when the coffin lid went flying, and Master Roderick's corpse clambered out of the grave. "Free! Finally free! I promised a lifetime of service in learning, and a lifetime I guaranteed." The Lich clapped his hands with glee. A finger went flying. "And now, finally, my retirement awaits." This right here was why Riss bought running shoes to a funeral. The rest of Master Roderick's speech was the front row's problem. Riss would like to say that was the last he saw of the man. Riss would like to say a lot of things. That he didn't accidentally bind his soul to a book. That he didn't fall in love with a, some of the time, inanimate object with grabby spirit hands and an awful sense of humor. That he never let Vera talk him into that second tattoo. But no, freed from his tower, Master Roderick was the kind of man to show up at weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, unexpected dinner parties he arranged last minute for other people to host. But that was another story. In this one, Riss went home with his book and went to bed. He found happiness in this one single good thing Master Roderick brought him. It didn't make up for the rest of it, but it was a start. So, I like that story a lot. That's fantastic. There we go. Marking that one as already read. That was really cute. I really like that story. I am going to quit now while I am ahead. Because I can hear my mother-in-law pottering around out there, and she's about to come and interrupt me again. So, I will see you all next week. I hope you all have a pleasant and uneventful day. I absolutely failed in keeping my voice doing the thing that I was trying to get it to do because I got caught up in the story, which bodes well for the story, I think. So, yeah. Y'all have a nice day, have a nice week, have fun, be good, make good trouble, and I'll see you next week.